My sister found this video on my mom's laptop. I think she was using her laptop for some school stuff and she must have gone snooping through her personal files. She found this video. It's from a few years ago according to the date of the file. It's definitely our mom in the video, and it looks to be in some hotel room. There's definitely a man in the video, but he's holding the camera and we don't see his face or hear his voice. I don't want to go into any detail, but it's basically a striptease sex tape filmed by the man, so while our mom is clearly identifiable, I can't tell exactly who the man is. I first got angry at my sister for showing it to me. I told her this is gross, I don't want to see that. She told me she thinks it could mean our mom is cheating on our dad and we should at least present the information to our dad. I told her it's very likely it's him in the photo. You can see the man's hands in a few shots. I think it's my dad. She seems to think it's not him. I told her if we show it to them and it is him, not only will we be embarrassed, but they would be mad at her for snooping. She was like, "Why do you care? I'm the one who did the snooping, so only I'll get in trouble. I'll cover you if they try to get mad at you." I told her there has to be a more sensitive way of approaching the situation, instead of just bombarding our parents with, "Hey, we saw your sex tape," which could either be with you or mom's secret lover, and we should consider the fallout. However, she seems pretty adamant that she just wants to show them. She thinks it's the safest option, since if she was cheating, she gets exposed, but if it was just dad, then no harm done. We can't agree on what to do, and I have a feeling she might show it to them regardless of what I feel, but if I push hard enough I might convince her of an alternative solution. Any ideas on what we should do? Relevant comments. OP comes up with plans. Option A, sending it anonymously. I like the idea of sending it to him anonymously, maybe through email or something. If it's him, no harm done, and he doesn't know it was us. Comment 1, please don't do that. Your parents will be shitting themselves wondering what kind of pervert hacker has gone through their computer to watch their private videos. Comment 2, but if it is him, and you send it anonymously, he'll be freaking out about who has it and how they found it. Option B, telling dad about the video. If it's him in it, he'll know it's him, and won't he get mad at us for even looking at it? Is there a way I can let him know that I'm sorry I had to look at it, but it's only because we were concerned about him, so he doesn't get mad? Option C, faking finding it in front of dad. OP's response: okay, what if we go up to him and tell him there's something we need to show him on the laptop, and then while browsing it in front of him we pretend to stumble on the thing for the first time? We can be like, "What is this?" If he genuinely doesn't know and says open it to find out, it means he doesn't know about it. If he's like, "No, don't click that," it means he knows. Comment 1, dude, if you use one of the plans you've put in this thread or confront him with it, please post an update. This is gold. I can't wait until your dad A, gets an anonymous email with his sex tape and thinks he's being blackmailed, B, finds out you have been watching him do the nasty with mom and is crazy embarrassed, or C, and my favorite option, you pretend to mistakenly find it while showing him something else and the whole family watches mom and dad's sex tape. Cheating women don't keep videos on the family laptop of them stripping and cheating. And if your mom turns out to be the dumbest cheater ever, then all of this will expose itself soon enough, but she's not, so it won't. But I just want to see the cringe update, so I'm still rooting for C. OP's response: no, here's what my sister and I decided to do. We're going to sit mom and dad down, tell them both, at the same time, that while we were using their laptop, we noticed there was a lot of junk and we were cleaning it up to make it run faster. In the process, we accidentally stumbled on this file, and mistakenly opened without knowing what it was, but closed as soon as we realized. We won't tell them we watched the whole thing, and we won't tell them we suspect cheating. We'll say that the reason we're telling them this is because we think they should save the file in a more secure location, or maybe on a separate hard drive or something, so it doesn't get hacked into. If my dad knows about the tape, he'll be like, okay, that makes sense. If he doesn't know about the tape, well, now he would. Update: things didn't go so well, unfortunately. I kept arguing with my sister. I told her if she's so certain they're cheating, the least we could do is ask dad first if he knows about the tape, but not mention that we've seen it. She was determined that it was cheating, based on the hands and the feet. She was like, those definitely aren't dad's. I told her she was creepy as fuck, if that was them in the video, and God knows how many times she's watched it. She was basically watching a video of our mother naked and fucking our dad's dick. Even if it wasn't our dad's dick, it's still fucking gross. She didn't care. I told her if I couldn't stop her, she should at least leave me out of it. I want nothing to do with it. She went nuclear. She went and told them everything, and embarrassed the fuck out of herself. Turned out her little detective work was way off. It was dad in the video. Our dad was angry but mostly bewildered, but he just laughed it off and got over it. Our mom, however, didn't take it so well. She had a panic attack, she went nuts. She was like, "What the hell is wrong with you kids?" I tried to stay out of it, but my sister dragged me into it and named me as her accomplice even though I had warned her against it. Our mom was so hurt and upset, not only that her daughter would so brazenly accuse her of cheating, but that her children had watched an explicit sex tape of her. She was really traumatized, she couldn't take it anymore. She got up and left to her parents' house where she's been there for a whole day to recuperate. She only called our dad to speak to, she won't speak to us. Our dad told us to just give it time until she's feeling better. Now on to the second story. I, 36, set up two of my friends, 36F and 36M. I found out today he has been catfishing me as his partner on her phone to check up on our friendship. I have a childhood friend, Emily, I've known since we were 5. We originally met because our respective fathers were both German and living in the UK, having married British women. They became friends and we were basically raised as siblings. Nothing remotely romantic has ever happened between us. It's accurate to say I treat her like I do my other sisters. People struggle at times to believe nothing has happened between us, but is it so insane for someone with 3 sisters to treat a childhood friend as a 4th? We stopped being friends briefly when she got married way too young to her boss. He ended up being incredibly abusive, controlling her life at every level, and over the 3 years they were together he basically isolated her from all friends and family. We reconciled when she divorced him. Around this time I attended university and met my now wife early on. We were assigned to the same floor in halls. We've been together for 17 years now and she's become really close to Emily over the years. Also at university I met a guy, George, on my course. We were part of the same friendship group but didn't stay in touch until we coincidentally ended up working together a good 10 years after graduation. I ended up introducing him to Emily and they started a relationship. A year or so later they moved in together. Emily was happy, he was happy. On the face of things he's seemingly been fine with me and Emily's friendship and never said anything. Over the past few weeks I started getting texts from her, sometimes late at night, that were just off. I was suspicious when she used a common British shortening of my full name rather than the traditional German version our respective fathers, and she would always use, and when some overtly flirty, almost outright sexting, occurred I immediately shut it down, 100% sure it wasn't her. I basically called him out and asked if this was in fact George using her phone and bluntly asked why he was trying to sext with me as his girlfriend. He never responded, but after explaining the situation to my wife she went over to Emily's with my phone to see what was going on. I wasn't there for this, but she showed Emily our entire text history and what he had done. George came home and they confronted him. He first outright denied it and had the balls to accuse Emily of sexting me and trying to hide said cheating from my wife by saying he did it. Emily just left with my wife to come stay with us after this because there wasn't any reasoning with him. The morning after he called and begged her to come home, he was crying and threw himself at her feet claiming he did it out of jealousy. He highlighted that she was in the habit of deleting our conversations, which drove him mad, an apparent choice she makes for all her texts with everyone, not just me, and he was always jealous of our relationship. He found it hard to see me with her, and after he saw her saying stuff like how she loved me, again, siblings, not being able to read our texts drove him to basically go fishing to establish our relationship. The sexting was an attempt to bluntly see if it was something we, or more specifically I, would engage in. At this point Emily asked for mine and my wife's opinion on this whole thing. I called bullshit on this being a mistake. Something he was driven to by jealousy. He violated her privacy by going through her phone, risked our friendship by masquerading as her. Risked my marriage by trying to bait me into sexting a friend. Risked Emily and my wife's friendship by making it look like Emily was sexting me. The entire thing was a clusterfuck. I didn't outright say she should leave him, but I highlighted how dishonest this whole thing was. She eventually went back home and I didn't hear anything for a few days, but Emily eventually revealed to my wife that she had functionally forgiven him. My wife worked out from the conversation what had happened. He had basically flipped the script on me by playing into fears from her marriage. He described me as another controlling male trying to dictate who she had a relationship with. He encouraged her to make her own decision, not bad advice in theory, but she had to ignore me because I didn't have her best interest at heart. I was controlling her like her ex. My wife quietly pointed out he was in fact being like her ex, not me. He was driving a wedge between her and family. At this point Emily just gave up. Said she couldn't win, couldn't decide between the man she loves and her brother, so fuck it. Let's pretend it never happened. We haven't really spoken since. Apparently part of forgetting this ever happened is also giving into his worries about our friendship. Every time I try and bring up what he did, I've either been ignored or told to stay out of it. Honestly, this pisses me off that he's gotten exactly what he wanted. He's stopped us talking. I know I can't force her to break up with him, but it's seemingly a catch-22. I can't push her to make a decision about what he did whilst he's got her convinced I'm controlling her. I rarely see George at work and he's rightly kept the fuck away from me. I was tempted to bring my sisters into this clusterfuck, tell them what happened, they love her like a sister too, and see if they can talk some sense into Emily, but that's somewhat manipulative too. So any advice here? Let shitty sleeping dogs lie. Try and get her to deal with what he did rather than sweeping it under the rug? Update: so, I followed the general advice of just leaving the entire situation alone. I agree any interference from me or my family would be manipulative and controlling, albeit well-meaning. So, I haven't really spoken to Emily since slightly before Christmas, but her mother contacted me a little after New Year to ask if I knew what was going on with her. Emily's cousin back in Germany had contacted her mother saying she had turned up on her doorstep having flown in from the UK on the 4th after apparently breaking up with George. According to her mother, Emily had come back to our hometown for the holidays. She brought George and at some point they ran into her ex-husband at the pub. For context, we grew up in a tiny village in the arse end of nowhere. There's literally nothing to our village but a pub, a post office and small supermarket. Her ex still lives where we grew up. So this is all information relayed to me via Emily's mother, but apparently at some point George approached Emily's ex-husband and asked for some advice. George is familiar with the story of their relationship and know how controlling he was, and why they divorced. Somewhat to her ex-husband's credit, he apparently refused to answer any questions and quietly approached Emily's mother to relay what he had asked. Now this is according to him, and George denies it, but he said George asked him how to handle me in terms of my friendship with Emily. I've no idea what Emily's ex-husband's motivation was here, but they've been divorced for a decade now and he hasn't contacted her in this time, so I'm inclined to believe it wasn't further attempts at interfering with her life. Maybe it was actually manipulation, maybe in the decade since they've divorced he's become a better man. Who knows? We're all inclined to believe that is what was asked, despite George denying it, because how else would her ex-husband know he had an issue with me recently? He isn't in contact with anyone who would know about the recent issues. Also, to be honest, the ex never had an issue with me. He saw me as a child, despite being the same age as his then wife, and constantly called me kiddo and asked how school was. It would be a very specific shot in the dark on his part to assume George had an issue with me without George saying so himself. So, her mother told Emily what George had tried to do and pointed out that her boyfriend is now trying to emulate her ex-husband's behavior and encouraged her to confront him over this and also what happened over the last month rather than ignoring it. Nobody was privy to the discussion they had, but he left sometime after it to return to their shared home and she stayed with her mother, saying they had broken up. She stayed with her mother until the day after, where she, without any warning, left for Germany. The cousin she's staying with assures us she's relatively fine. She's just overwhelmed and embarrassed she let this happen again. She couldn't handle being where she might run into either ex, so staying with her mother was off table and she just ran somewhere far, but safe. I still haven't spoken to Emily. I've sent her a message with some condolences and reassurance she will always have a home here in the UK. I've decided to continue to give her space whilst making it clear I am there for her. She hasn't responded, but I assume this is just out of awkwardness over what happened and how technically George was once my friend. He hasn't spoken to me either and I haven't seen him at work at all. So, not a happy ending per se. It shouldn't have taken her abusive ex getting involved for a resolution, but as people predicted, George was being abusive and he would repeat that behavior. I suppose it was relatively painless that he showed his true colors so emphatically without much further abuse. This could have dragged on. Thanks for the advice. Me staying out of it didn't make this any easier for her, but it probably avoided making it worse. Update 2: given this whole thing has now been entirely sorted in the 3 months since it happened, I thought I'd give an actual full resolution. So, Emily came back to the UK just before the country was locked down and moved in with us, reluctantly. We grabbed some beers, and played Divinity 2, whilst we hashed out exactly what went down from her perspective. I apologized for going behind her back and speaking to her mother about it all. Situations like this are never helped by information being relayed through other people, and I asked if she wanted to go through it all start to finish. Basically, she buried her head in the sand the day she found out he had been trying to sext me as her. It was just too much. She couldn't win. She either lost the man she loved, and the lifestyle she had, or lost her brother. I assured her she'd never lose me, but she revealed she low-key hated the fact she let herself be taken advantage of like this twice and couldn't face me having not listened to my advice. She also mentioned that breaking up with him would inevitably land her on my doorstep for support, and that made her feel bad also, hence escaping to Germany and not talking to me about this. This went deeper and she opened up about her insecurities, how she regretted never going to university, instead marrying her abusive ex-husband, and how she feels like an accessory to other people's happiness. She saw me and my wife, a power couple, as she put it, and just felt so small by comparison. She did love George, but leaving him would leave her with functionally nothing again, and she couldn't handle that. We talked about this a lot. I revealed I aware my support of her could be a problem. I was feeling like I had made their relationship awkward by being so involved in her life. It might have been hard for George feeling like her boyfriend, whilst I was there picking up her tabs, doing the DIY and basically acting like a father coddling his child. I asked if my, with retrospection, financial support of her tied into this feeling of inadequacy, like I was dragging her along for my ride, and she said it was a problem. She felt trapped when the relationship ended because she had no independence or true control. Whilst I would never use my position to control her, she would still be living by someone else's good graces. She felt she needed to stand on her own 2 feet, be her own woman rather than relying on a man, no matter how much she loved and trusted him. That way her decisions would be her own, rather than under some level of duress. In the same way a child wants independence from her parents, she feels she finally needs independence from me. So we came up with a game plan. Now the lockdown has obviously made this harder. She is still living with me and my wife currently, but the plan is she's going to go back into education. She was capable of attending university, had the qualifications, but decided not to due to marriage. My financial security was really born of an inheritance I had after my father died, life insurance. I used to not have to worry about rent during my extended time in education and early career. I bought a small flat with it I still own. I've decided to pay it forward and put her in a similar situation by letting her use my flat, which is currently unoccupied because it's only been rented to students due to its proximity to 2 universities. Yes, this is me financially supporting her, but in a strictly limited way. No more covering errand bills, paying for holidays or footing the bill when we socialize. She will not pay rent, but she will cover all bills on the flat, and she moves out the moment she's in work. She didn't love the idea of me owning her home, but I called it my last act as that guy in her life, the pseudo-brother, father, sugar daddy, best friend. After this we'll just be independent siblings, best friends. She will be moving soon, we'll need her room after all since my wife is now 5 months pregnant. Turns out she's been pregnant since late December and all this started. As for George, he swears up and down he never asked the ex-husband to handle me. He claims he asked how to be fine with me. It wasn't seeking advice how to deal with me. It was seeking advice how to be fine with me the way her ex-husband was. Could be true, who knows? It's irrelevant ultimately. Though we recently found out George moved a girlfriend into the house him and Emily used to share, and here's the kicker. It's a long-time friend. Emily is fairly certain he never cheated on her, but she out loud laughed when she found out he's romantically living together with a long-time friend 3 months after the breakup. The dude's insecurity was likely born of his own feelings for a friend. He was getting close with a girl he was friends with, so he projected that onto me and Emily. Edit, just to clarify, because this paints a picture I don't intend. I don't pay all of Emily's bills, nor for her stuff and holidays. She doesn't want independence from me specifically, she wants independence full stop. She went from her parents, to her now ex-husband's, and then spent about a decade living paycheck to paycheck before meeting George and living largely off his money. She has no real qualifications and her current line of work has limited prospects. The things I do for her come in 2 categories, and the lack of clarity between the one-offs and the consistent things made it look like I pay for her entire world. Firstly, there's the trivial stuff I do consistently that I'm stopping as a massive overreaction to George. Logically it's fine that a brother and his wife do these things for his sister, but they weirdly make her uncomfortable, and it obviously made her ex uncomfortable. Stuff like I've done the odd bit of DIY, specifically fixing a vacuum, which isn't insane given I work in R&D for a vacuum brand, and I pay for her drinks and stuff if we socialize. I'm stopping all that trivial levels of support largely at her request to ease her discomfort at being subsidized by me. It's a pride thing. This might also help with any jealous boyfriends wrongly assuming because I pay for her cinema ticket along with my wife we're secretly Mormon. The second category were the big, one-off, things like paying that bill or buying plane tickets. Things I did in a crisis and or out of extreme generosity once. She wants to be able to be safe during shit like COVID without needing to live with me. She wants to be able to break up with a guy and be okay alone rather than crashing here. She wants to be able to fuck up a meter reading on her electricity and weather the silly bill that comes without me paying it. That happened once. I'm not gonna stop doing these things entirely. An emergency is an emergency. We won't let her come to any harm, but instead we're gonna try and make it that she doesn't need me to do these things via an education and hopefully a better job. So, I don't pay for her entire life, I just muddled some big things I've done in an emergency in with some trivial brotherly support. Thank you for joining me today. Don't forget to connect with each other in the comments below. Until next time, be kind, be curious, and I'll catch you in the next video. Until then, Corner Stories signing off.